Welcome to the Orchestrate All the Things podcast. I'm George Anadiotis and we'll be connecting the dots together.
AIOps is what you get when you combine big data and machine learning to automate IT operations processes, including event correlation, anomaly detection, and causality determination. At least that's how Gartner defines AIOps. Based on this definition, as well as coverage of vendors that have products they label with the AIOps moniker, you'd be inclined to think that AIOps is mostly about anomaly detection and remediation. But what about provisioning, configuration, deployment, and orchestration? These are all essential parts of IT operations which have not received as much AI ops attention. They also happen to be at the core of Ansible, Red Hat's open source IT automation tool. Now, Red Hat is embarking on a new direction for Ansible with Project Wisdom, aiming to take automation to the next level in collaboration with IBM Research. Red Hat refers to Project Wisdom as the first community project to create an intelligent natural language processing capability for Ansible and the IT automation industry. We connected with Red Hat Vice President and General Manager for the Ansible business unit, Tom Anderson, to discuss Project Wisdom's premises, status, and trajectory.
I hope you will enjoy the podcast. If you like my work, you can follow Link Data Orchestration on Twitter, LinkedIn, and Facebook.
So my name is Tom Anderson, and I work at Red Hat where I lead the Ansible business unit. Ansible is our enterprise automation platform. I've spent the last 9 or 10 years now at Red Hat, but have a very, very long career in data center automation, data center management, IT management, and that background. And I took over leading the Ansible business unit about 10 or 11 months ago. But I've worked around Ansible and our customers for a long time.
Okay, great. Thanks for the introduction. And well, the next reasonable thing to ask you would be obviously what is Ansible? I know it's a very naive question in a way, but since not everyone who may be listening is familiar with Ansible, it's a good place to start.
Yeah, so Ansible is an open source technology platform that allows folks to automate into a common language access to their underlying IT infrastructure and applications. So let me put it into a practical example. So I'm trying to automate my Cisco networks, and instead of having to learn my Cisco automation language, I can use Ansible to do that, and I can use the same language to automate my F5 parts of my network and my NetApp parts of my storage and my AWS EC2 instances using the same automation language that crosses and abstracts all of those various domains and technology platforms that IT infrastructure owners have to deal with and application developers have to deal with on a day-to-day basis. So it simplifies the provisioning and operations of those underlying IT infrastructures by abstracting them into a common language.
Okay, so I'm guessing that the way that Ansible does that is by providing a sort of intermediate layer, what's commonly known as middleware. I suppose that sort of does this abstraction that you just talked about. And then I think the way that people are able to configure Ansible is by using something called YAML file, so a specific configuration language that people can use to interact with Ansible. Is that correct?
Yeah, it's well put, George. So what we call modules, right? Those are the integration pieces that talk to the underlying APIs of those infrastructure pieces that abstracts them into that common Ansible language. It is written in YAML, and we call them playbooks. So playbooks and roles are things that allow you to build workflows that interact with these underlying infrastructure items and application items using that common language that, again, gets put into what we call a playbook, and it is in YAML format.
Okay, I see. So now that we have at least a general idea of what Ansible is and what it does, and a little bit of how it does what it does, let's talk about the actual news. So what you're about to announce called Project Wisdom. So in your own words, how would you describe what Project Wisdom is in a nutshell?
Yeah, so Project Wisdom is, what I would call bringing applied AI to automating infrastructure and application deployments. So using natural language processing to turn English commands into that automation playbook, so that either the expert on automation can be more efficient, or a newcomer to automation and a newcomer to Ansible can get up to speed faster. So instead of having to know all the peculiars and specifics about an underlying infrastructure, I can simply type in an English command in natural language. I would like to deploy a Postgres instance on AWS. You type that in, and out what pops is a fully structured playbook, syntactically correct and efficient. And it's done, 95% of the work for you. You just go in and, add whatever credentials you might need to achieve that piece of work, and you're up and running. So again, it makes experts more efficient because it allows them to do more, and it brings new people into the environment. I may know Postgres really well, but I don't know Ansible. Or I may know Ansible really well, but I don't know Postgres. Whatever that combination might be, it allows you to just use natural language to produce that automation content that gets you up and running quickly.
Yep, indeed. It sounds like it's really a time saver for people, and also it makes the interactions with the system much easier. So, would you say that it entirely removes the need for people to learn how to work with YAML, or is the outcome of what Project Wisdom can give you? Does it still need a little bit of configuration and messing around just to get it to do exactly what you need to do?
Yeah, I would love to say that out of the box it's 100%, but that wouldn't be accurate. I would say that you still need some knowledge to this, but what we're trying to abstract is that you have to be an expert, right? We're trying to, this is the wrong word, but democratize automation, if you will, push automation out from those subject matter experts, of which there are not that many, and they're being asked to do more and more. So how do we kind of scale those subject matter experts on those environments? Again, on those underlying, my storage, my cloud, my network, my edge, my databases, my storage, whatever it might be. How do we kind of accelerate their ability to become more efficient, right? And they do that by having a trained model that they've worked and helped to train, and put that model into the hands of people that can consume it, and use that natural language processing to go ahead and create automation that meets the needs of those underlying infrastructure owners or those domain owners. They know that they can push out automation into the hands of less experienced people, and it will be creating not only syntactically correct, but efficient and from a compliance perspective, correct for their environment.
Mm-hmm. I see. Another question I had was whether this interaction, commands, let's say in English, that people are able to use to interact with the software, whether that's done using spoken language, or it's actually done by typing in, or maybe both.
Today it's text. Out of the gate it's text, but it would be a pretty short trip to voice, right? I mean, it's not a far trip now from voice to text translation, so I could see this moving that way really quickly. And but today, out of the gate, text translation into natural language text into playbooks.
Mm-hmm. Okay, well, to be honest with you, I don't know. I'm trying to picture system admin types, just sitting in data centers and giving voice commands to Project Wisdom, and I'm having a little bit of a hard time. But well, people use software in different ways, and maybe some of them would like to use it that way. Who knows?
Yeah, I think we'll probably take off, 95% of the of the demand with the text. I agree with you, George. I still have a hard time seeing system admins, speaking into a thing to say, provision this database for me. But hey, you never know.
Yeah, indeed. So Let's talk a little bit about what's under the hood and what's used to power this impressive sounding feat. So I read a little bit of the press release that you're about to send out, and I found that some interesting things mentioned in it. So it sounds like this is a collaboration with IBM, and there is a language model that has actually been developed by IBM that's used to power that. And furthermore, it seems that what IBM did in order to train or to fine tune this particular model to be able to basically write code, because that's what it comes down to, is that they used a lot of open source code, and actually they did some things that were pretty interesting in the way that uh, they they fed this data to the system. So I wondered what. First of all, before I start bombarding you with questions, I wonder how familiar you are with the actual underlying technology, with the AI model that was used.
Yeah, so kind of medium familiarity, George. And first of all, yeah, this is a close collaboration with us and IBM Research. The vice president of IBM Research, Ruchir Puri, and his team have worked with us over the past year on this, where they bring, obviously tons of experience on the AI front and on the natural language processing front and on the large language model front. And what we bring is a lot of the expertise around the use case itself and helping train the model with that experience and that content and the repositories that we have. So it's been a very close collaboration with IBM. And so I'm not going to put myself out there as an AI expert, but I know enough. I think I know enough about how do they say it? I know enough about the architecture to be dangerous.
Okay, that sounds promising. So I guess that the way it probably must have worked is that well, actually, before I venture into speculation, I wonder if you know whose idea was it to do that. I mean, who initiated this project? Was it someone from Red Hat, or was it someone from IBM, or was it, I don't know, some kind of joint venture brainstorming?
It depends on who you talk to, George. No, I'm just kidding. Let's say let's share that. Let's share the credit. Like I said, there's an individual on my team who's passionate around AI and driving automation use cases kind of into the next gen here. And we Red Hat have developed a very good and strong relationship with the folks at IBM Research, the labs. And so this was an opportunity for these two folks, Ruchir and Alessandro Perilli, on my team, to connect and to have a conversation and to start to initiate this work. And like I said, it started about a year ago, where the idea started getting kicked around and then kind of kicked into full gear as Ruchir took a big chunk of his team and dedicated them to this work, along with our folks, engineering folks and business unit folks, to kind of drive a demonstrable model that what we're talking about and showing at Ansible Fest this week now.
Okay. So you just referred to IBM Labs, and I looked it up a little bit and saw that IBM Labs have something called AI for Code. It's one of their projects, and like I said, I think it goes a little bit beyond the scope of this conversation. But they did a number of interesting things in how they trained this AI model that they created, and to be more specific, it looks like an interesting thing that they did, which I think is not, to the best of my knowledge at least, is not something that people who train these large language models usually do when it comes to code. They added more context than usual. So they didn't just feed the code to the model, but they specifically took code that was that was produced as part of coding competitions, and they also fed the description of what the code was meant to achieve, and some documentation and things like that. So supposedly that has made their model a little bit more sensitive, let's say, to the specifics of coding. So I'm guessing that probably what must have happened was that the people from IBM came with a pre-trained model, and then they work with you to fine-tune it to the specific needs of Ansible. Is my speculation anywhere near the truth?
It's dead on, George. That's exactly what happened, which was it wasn't so much about turning natural language into a piece of YAML, but it was about turning natural language requests into not only syntactically correct, but specifically correct for Ansible, right? So Ansible is just, it's written in YAML or it's expressed in YAML, but it's really about all the specificities around the Ansible language and the specificities around specific integrations into those underlying things, i.e., how does it interact with AWS? How does it interact with Azure? How does it interact with on-premise stuff? How does it interact with specific application APIs? So a lot of that experience, that training of the model was more than just dumping out, and I'm not trying to minimize this, but more than just dumping out a piece of YAML and really dumping out a piece of Ansible, right? That's the first use case that we decided to apply it to, was to Ansible itself. So I know we've kind of bounced back and forth between the term YAML and the term Ansible. Ansible is a language. It is expressed in YAML. This was turning natural language, using NLP to turn natural language into Ansible as opposed to YAML. It's just expressed in YAML.
Yes, I think it's an important distinction to make, and it's kind of natural that it keeps popping up. So you're right. There's two parts in this. One is the syntactic part, let's say. So being able to produce something that makes sense, that can be parsed, and that's the easy part in a way. I think the hardest part is actually getting the system to understand what it's being asked to do. So, for example, I don't know, connect my Postgres my Postgres instance from AWS to another, I don't know, MySQL instance in Google Cloud or whatever, this type of thing. The system has to actually understand, what does Postgres mean, what does Google Cloud mean, what do all of these things mean, and then it actually has to be able to produce the code that will make that happen, I guess. Or is that part already been taken care of by Ansible?
No, so that's part of it. So it needs to produce the code that does that, but it needs to do it in a way that does it according to best practices, right? What is the most efficient? What is the best practice in a way of doing this? And so that the first kind of phase of Project Wisdom is to be able to convert natural language into syntactically and expertly correct Ansible language code in a YAML file. The next step is around we have about a 3 or 4 step plan for Project Wisdom down the road here, which is once you've created that, what if I just want to take an existing playbook that someone has wrote not using Project Wisdom? I've written this playbook, and I wrote it 2 months ago or 2 years ago or whenever it was, and I want to be able to put it through the system and say, make recommendations of how to make this better, how to write this in a more efficient way, how to write it in a more secure way. I'll let Project Wisdom take that and spit that out in a new way. Or I'm creating a playbook by hand, not with Project Wisdom, and I'm interested in finding out what's out on the internet of who else has done this. So Project Wisdom could go out and find content that is similar to what I am creating and compare it to what I've created and give you a side-by-side comparison of which is better. And then there's the complete inverse of it, which says, I have this Ansible playbook that somebody has written. It's written in YAML, so it's not exactly written in English. And I want Project Wisdom to tell me what this will do. And it will spit out in natural language English. It will tell you step by step exactly what this playbook is doing. So we have this whole kind of roadmap for Project Wisdom around Ansible from top all the way to bottom, and both sides. So I'm not sure if I'm answering your question, but the idea here is that bringing this expertise around Ansible and around infrastructure automation and around application automation, deployment automation, bringing that expertise together with the folks who know how to build a model, right, to build syntactically correct the model, and then working together to train that model for this specific set of use cases. And like I said, the first one of which is Ansible at Red Hat. There are multiple use cases down the road that we could expand this beyond Ansible into other areas of stuff that our customers are interested in.
Mm-hmm. Yes, actually, that's something I've been meaning to ask you about. But before we venture into that, there's something else that I'd like to get covered. So, just now you spoke of ways that ways in which you helped fine tune that model, and I was wondering um, how how exactly did you do it? And I mean, usually the way that this works is that you need to have a data set of playbooks in your case. Where did you get that data set? Was it from? Did you produce it specifically for this purpose, or did you already have a repository of playbooks that you could refer to, or was it something else?
No, it's a great question. Yeah, so we have a very large repository of playbooks. Plus, there is lots of publicly available playbook content out on a site called Ansible Galaxy, which is a upstream community place where content is exchanged freely. And then, our Red Hat ourselves have our own pretty large GitHub repo of content that we use to help train this model. And then, of course, there's the fine tuning of the model with expertise from our engineering staff.
Mhm.
And next, let me just kind of take the next step in this journey of what we're announcing here, which is a project wisdom, right? It's not called product wisdom; it's called project wisdom. And like everything we do at Red Hat, this is an open source community, and that we're introducing this project to the community and saying, join with us. The more people that are involved in training this model, the better the quality of the output will be. Ansible as a open source project is an enormous open source project. I think there are somewhere close to 1 million upstream open source projects, and Ansible, from a contribution standpoint, is always in the top 10 or 20 of that million. So there are many, 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 many thousands of people out there creating Ansible content out in the community and what we call upstream. And so what we're doing here at Ansible Fest this week with the announcement of Project Wisdom is we're inviting that community to join us now. We think we have a working model now. We have something that we can start to make better. Does it become a product? Maybe, but right now it's a project. And so we're going to get a lot of input into that model, training into that model by bringing thousands of people, content developers into that model or into that process to help train that model in the project.
Mhm. Great. That's you just touched on another area that was also in my list. So, terms of use and current status and this sort of thing. So, you just said that it's a project. It hasn't exactly reached product status yet. So, I'm wondering if we focus on the code itself and on the model, what kind of state would you say it is currently in? So is it alpha? Is it beta? Somewhere in between? A little better? A little worse? Or
Yeah, no, that's a great question, George. I'd say it's somewhere in between, right? It's a working model now. It is working. I can go to the model and I can type in a command, and darn if it doesn't, pop out really good Ansible content, right? Now, Ansible's set of use cases is so broad. I mean, people do everything, like I said, from cloud to data center automation to PLC automation of devices on industrial edge or industrial floors, right? I mean, the breadth of the things that people do with Ansible to automate an infrastructure is so broad that I don't want to say that, hey, you could type in, create a playbook for me that updates a medical device of some sort. I'm gapping for a specific example here, but a machine device on an industrial floor and have it pop that out today. But all of the sort of the most popular sort of use cases around cloud provisioning, around data center provisioning, around APIs into application infrastructures, that is very rich right now in the working model that we have, and it'll get richer over time, and we'll bring in training that model to do more and more use cases.
Mhm. Yeah, it makes sense. I mean, obviously, the most popular use cases are the ones that you have also more data about. So it makes perfect sense that, the model will perform better for those rather than, some niche outliers on medical devices or whatever else that may be.
Exactly. Exactly. And so yeah, kind of, in the open source stuff, we don't usually call stuff alpha and beta, but if I was to kind of pick something, it would be between alpha and beta. And these projects, like all open source projects, you put it out there, you ask for contributions, you get people on board, they start working with it, it gets better, adoption grows, and pretty soon it becomes something, material. We expect it to do that, but I hate to predict, right? That's not how we build software at Red Hat, right? We work within communities to kind of catalyze these communities to join together to solve a problem. And then we take that and make that enterprise ready for our customers. But there are always the upstream pieces of this. So it's a little hard, I know in a commercial software organization I've used for many years, alpha, beta, production, right, or GA, whatever it might be. It's a little bit different in an open source community where it's much more of a evolutionary path versus stops on a way, stops on a journey.
Yeah, makes sense. So, if people want to use Project Vision right now, what would they actually do? Is the model? So, first of all, what's the terms of use and what's the license that you're releasing this under? And can people just download it and then somehow deploy it on their own infrastructure and start using it, or is it? I'm guessing it's probably not available as a service, at least at this point. It may be at some point in the future, probably, right?
Yeah. So, the underlying infrastructure to support this work is the compute requirements are fairly substantial. So it won't be downloadable in the in the short term, right? It'll be a extension that connects to a web service or to a hosted service that allows you to interact with that service through, in a typical example, if you're using VS Code, right, it would be extension in VS Code where you could be typing in the commands and have it fill out the playbook for you or create the playbook for you. We're working on the licensing model right now. And again, it's just a project, so we're not licensing anything. It's an open source project with a set of contributors, but it's built on open source componentry. So nothing in there is proprietary other than our expertise. Obviously, that's not something that's not, our expertise that have been added to that is the value and the differentiation of it versus some piece of intellectual property. But both IBM and Red Hat are committed to having this be an open source project, a community-based project with broad scale participation. I don't think my just sort of selfish business aspect here is the more people that are creating Ansible content, Ansible playbooks, the more people that are using that provides a larger market for Red Hat to go in and offer our Ansible product to those people that are using that project, right? So I see it more as wide scale adoption of Ansible as a default and ubiquitous automation language for their use, and making it as easy as possible for them to do that. And someday later down the road, there'll be an opportunity for us to go and offer them additional capabilities with our platform for managing and securing and scaling their automation.
Yeah, that also makes sense. I mean, that's the kind of the open source, the monetizing open source playbook in a way. So yes, that makes perfect sense. The reason I was more wondering about that was basically what you also said yourself. So I'm guessing that the compute requirements to run this in your own infrastructure will be pretty substantial. So I'm wondering, from a practical standpoint, how can people actually use it at this point? Since it's probably not just the compute requirements that are substantial, but also probably the simple configuration that needs to be done in order to deploy this and fine tune this in your own infrastructure will be not everyone's cup of tea probably. So how can people actually use it, and by using it, do all the things that you just said, produce more playbooks and fine tune the model and so on?
Yep. So just give you a sense of kind of, you're right. The scale of this is such that it would be hosted. And the good thing about being partners with IBM Labs and IBM Research is they have access to their cognitive computing cloud, a supercomputer that, most people don't have access to that sort of, resource to be able to do this. So we're really, really fortunate to have the partnership and relationship that we do with the good folks at IBM Research that have been working on this. So what we're announcing here at Fest is this demonstrable availability of this, and we're inviting people to kind of join us who are interested. And over the next little while, we're going to be exposing this service. It'll be, obviously it'll be a web service that they will be able to access through URL and start to use within their VS Code plugin. But we're not announcing sort of availability of that ability for them to start using it today, but to join us in this community project, start learning about it, understanding what we need from them, what the commitments are. We need to work out, like you said, the licensing model for making sure that we're respecting their individual contributions to this in a way that makes sense. I know there's been lots of discussions in the environment about other sort of code-gen, pair programming products and who owns the content and all that kind of stuff. So we're being real careful with that right now, making sure. So what we're doing today is inviting people to who are interested to join with us. And then we'll make that available here over the next little while for them to actually start using it.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Okay. Yes. I mean, you're right. That's also something that's been on the back of my mind, and I was wondering if you have a take on that, because as you just said, and actually I just read just before connecting with you right now, there's somebody, for example, who's taking legal action against. Copilot, because they're saying you basically scraped all this open source code, and by doing so you're violating some terms of use and so on. So it's new territory basically, and nobody's exactly sure how these things do work or should work. So you're justified to be cautious, I would say.
Yeah, what's the old construction metaphor? We want to measure twice and cut once here. What I mean? We want to make sure we're doing the right thing out of the gate, and be real respectful of that. And so that's why we're being careful. And it is new. It's new territory for us. It's absolutely new territory for us. It's new territory for the industry. And so that's why we're being cautious and kind of, moving kind of step by step through this, George. So you're exactly right.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so I take it from what you said previously that the envisioned, let's say, way for people to actually use it is probably through plugins for their favorite development environment, right?
Yes, exactly, for their favorite IDE, right? We have a lot of people that use VS Code. There's many other ones, but yeah, we already have extensions, VS Code extensions for Ansible. Linting and playbook development. And so this would be a natural place for us to start that journey.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so in that respect, it does. I was trying, to categorize, let's say, where exactly in which box, let's say, people should put this project. And in my mind, just having read the outline in the press release, it looked. On the one hand, it does look a bit like all these so-called coding assistants that are out there, but there is a difference. So I think, but then again, by you mentioning this, I'm not so sure. Maybe it's not that different after all. The difference in my mind was that this seemed like it was not specifically aimed at individual developers. Let's say it was. I thought the idea was more to target enterprise IT. And from a strategy standpoint, this also makes sense because, it's a partnership with IBM, and everyone knows, what a huge footprint IBM has in the enterprise. So, and I also read an interesting use case from IBM Labs. So it seems that they have successfully used their AI model, which underlies Project Wisdom as well, to do things such as refactoring a big monolithic enterprise application into something that can be deployed on the cloud, which is more modular, and so on and so forth. So, what do you say is like the positioning for this eventual product that you're started building?
Yeah. So for today, right, we're focused on those folks that use Ansible today, and those fall into kind of two communities. One are those infrastructure IT people, the operations teams and infrastructure owners within IT, which you refer to, which are the kind of bread and butter of IBM's business for many years, and ours too. But there's also the developer community, where a developer wants to write an application and deploy an application, and they don't need to be, or they don't want to also be an expert on storage subsystems, and security systems and load balancers and virtual networking and firewalls and all of the other things that we're asking a developer to know when they build and deploy their application. So a lot of users of Ansible today, even before Project Wisdom, are developers who are just trying to make their job of getting their environment up and running, deploying their application, deploying updates to that application, deploying the infrastructure to run that application on. Use Ansible today to do that. This will make it a lot easier for a developer to be able to deploy not just their applications, but the infrastructure that will be required to support those applications that they're building and deploying. So I see it as kind of both sides. That initially, out of the gate, you're absolutely right. Those infrastructure owners, those DevOps teams, those are the people that we're targeting with this. I talk to a lot of enterprise IT customers of ours, and one of the things that I hear consistently from our customers is that they have a difficult time attracting talent, right? The number of people with the skills on the market are very rare and very expensive. They have a hard time attracting new talent, and they have a hard time retaining their existing skill base and their existing talent. And so because they're being asked to do more and more, their environments are becoming more and more complex, multiple clouds, multiple data centers, edge environments. There's a lot being asked of these teams. So how can we make their jobs easier? How can we take a lot of the mundane away from that? And I think AI and Project Wisdom from an Ansible perspective is a great start on that.
Mm-hmm. Okay. And well, I have an sort of forward-looking and a bit speculative question. So again, as you probably know, Google's big event was last week, and there was a lot of buzz around that. And one of the interesting things that came out of that was its executives made a number of predictions, among which there was one specifically that caught my eye, and I think may be relevant in this context. So one of the predictions that they came up was that automated cloud around automating cloud infrastructure decisions. And the reason I think it's relevant is because it sounds like pretty much what you're also trying to achieve with this project here. And so given that this is a collaboration with IBM, which also happens to run its own cloud, and well, Red Hat on its part has OpenShift. I was wondering if this could possibly be a case of, well, dogfooding, let's say. So do you think that what you have done for Ansible can be generalized and taken to the next level and actually used to automate those configuration decisions internally for IBM's cloud or for OpenShift?
Absolutely. What we see as, most of the conversation around cloud automation is around day zero provisioning of the initial provisioning of an infrastructure for someone to deploy an application and run an application on. But what we see, so there's been a lot of work around the automation of that. Project Wisdom is going to make that much more tractable, if you will, across multiple clouds. But kind of the next phase that we see is in around the day two operations of these applications and the underlying environment to maintain them. So how do I detect and respond to alerts and events and things that are changing in my environment, whether that environment is in GCP, whether it's running on Azure, whether it's running on my data center, whether it's running on an IBM mainframe somewhere in some colo location, whether it's running at the edge. All of these things are now happening in this complex ecosystem, and how do I respond to those, and how can I make that more of a hands-free experience? So a lot of those day two operational activities ultimately are remediated or changed using Ansible automation to do that. So I can see a future where the evolution of Project Wisdom may be where systems detect and create a description of a problem, and that problem is then automatically turned into a playbook for remediation, and no one ever has to touch it. That you have this sort of hands-free, end-to-end, fully automated. People talk about AIOps for a long time. This is really what I'm thinking about with real AIOps, where decisions are being made and content and automation decisions are being created in real time using AI. So I can see that down. That's not today. I'm not trying to say that's our first ambition today, but I can see that down the road and evolving down the road. And back to one other thing you said earlier, which was a lot of the work that IBM has been doing around taking monolithic applications and and converting those, say, taking a COBOL application and translating it into a Java, or what we see is taking those monolithic applications and turning those things into cloud native application formats, and then automatically deploying those onto our OpenShift container platform. Those are lots of use cases that we see down the road. That's why this isn't called Project Ansible Wisdom. This is called Project Wisdom, right? We intend to apply this capability from Wisdom into multiple areas. The first of which is creating Ansible playbooks that will likely evolve down the road.
Yeah, it is indeed a very interesting direction, a very interesting path to start working. And to the best of my knowledge, I'm not aware of at least publicly available information on other big vendors doing that. So it seems like, well, you may be the first. Well, you and IBM may be the first to start exploring that. And well, good luck with everything going forward. And thanks a lot for the conversation today.
Thank you, George. It was great talking to you and appreciate your time.
I hope you enjoyed the podcast. If you like my work, you can follow Linked Data Orchestration on Twitter, LinkedIn, and Facebook.